Hello, everyone. Let's have a radical dive into the work of Peter Kropotkin,
Oh, yeah.
specifically his book Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution.
Right.
Keep it radical, keep it revolutionary. We're going to explore how this Russian anarchist and zoologist challenged the very foundation of how we think about evolution.
It's fascinating how Kropotkin, writing in the late 19th and early 20th centuries,
Yeah.
took on the prevailing Darwinian idea of competition
Right.
as the sole driving force of evolution. Survival of the fittest and war of each against all were the dominant narratives.
Right.
But he saw a different story unfolding.
You're right.
Yeah.
It was a pretty cutthroat interpretation of Darwin.
It was.
So how did Kropotkin turn this idea on its head?
Well,
Did he completely reject the idea of competition?
not exactly.
Okay.
Kropotkin didn't deny the role of competition.
Yeah.
But he argued that it was only part of the picture.
Oh.
Through his observations of both animal and human societies,
Uh-huh.
he proposed mutual aid as an equally important and often more significant factor
Right.
in survival and progress.
Okay, so let's define what we're talking about here.
Sure.
What exactly did Kropotkin mean by mutual aid?
Right.
It sounds pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing there's more to it
Yeah.
than just being nice to your neighbor.
Right. It's more than just casual kindness.
Okay.
For Kropotkin, mutual aid was about cooperation as a driving force in evolution, a deeply ingrained instinct that propelled species,
Okay.
including humans,
Okay.
towards greater complexity and success. He saw cooperation as a strategy for survival,
Yeah.
for acquiring resources, and even for developing intelligence.
So it's not just about altruism. It's about a kind of strategic cooperation
Kind
that
of.
benefits the entire group.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
A lone wolf might struggle to survive,
Yeah.
but a pack working together can take down much larger prey, ensuring the survival of the whole group.
That's a great example. And Kropotkin saw this same principle at work throughout the natural world.
Absolutely.
Right? He wasn't just theorizing, he was drawing on real-world observations.
His book is filled with vivid examples of animals engaging in mutual aid.
Wow.
He talks about cranes forming sentry lines to watch for predators,
Wow.
parrots coordinating in groups to raid fields, and even small birds mobbing birds of prey to protect their nests.
Oh, wow.
These aren't random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
They're sophisticated, cooperative behaviors that enhance survival and success.
That's incredible. It really makes you think about how we often overlook the role of cooperation in nature. We're so focused on the competition, the struggle for dominance,
Yeah.
that we miss the subtle ways in which species support each other.
Kropotkin was trying to shift that focus.
Yeah.
He believed that these observations in the animal kingdom had profound implications for understanding human societies as well.
Right.
He argued that from our early stages, humans were social creatures living in tribes,
Yeah.
not isolated families, as some theorists of the time proposed.
So he was challenging this idea of the solitary savage that was so prevalent exactly in the thinking of the time.
Yes.
This notion that humans were inherently individualistic and that society was something imposed on us rather than something we naturally gravitated towards.
Kropotkin pointed to evidence from archaeology and anthropology to support his view.
Yeah?
He argued that the communal nature of early settlements and the complex social structures of so-called primitive societies actually demonstrated that cooperation was key to our survival and development as a species.
This is where the concept of the village community comes in, right?
Right.
This wasn't just a term for any group of people living together.
Yeah.
It was a specific type of social structure
Exactly.
that Kropotkin saw as a crucial stage in human social evolution.
He saw the village community as a model for how mutual aid could function in a human society.
Yeah.
He emphasized its core values of communal land ownership,
Right.
shared labor, and collective decision-making.
Okay, so let's paint a picture for our listeners.
Sure.
What did daily life look like in these village communities?
Well,
Give us some specific examples of how this mutual aid played out in practice.
imagine a world where fields were cultivated jointly, resources were shared during times of famine, and communal granaries and tools were maintained for the benefit of all.
Okay.
Kropotkin saw these practices as evidence of a deeply ingrained instinct for cooperation,
Right.
a recognition that the well-being of the individual was inextricably linked to the well-being of the community.
It sounds like a radical departure from the individualistic mindset
It is.
that dominates much of the world today.
It is.
Did Kropotkin see this communal spirit only in these smaller,
Oh.
more traditional societies?
Um,
Or did he believe that mutual aid could exist in more complex and developed settings as well?
he believed it could, and he pointed to the medieval cities of Europe as a prime example.
That's intriguing.
Yeah.
Medieval cities are often associated with overcrowding, poverty, and disease.
Yeah.
Not exactly a breeding ground for cooperation.
Right.
So how did Kropotkin see mutual aid playing out in these urban environments?
He saw it in the rise of guilds and fraternities, which he viewed as a continuation and evolution of the mutual aid principles he observed in village communities.
Now, guilds are fascinating.
They are.
They were these powerful organizations that controlled entire industries, right?
Yes.
But they were also more than just economic powerhouses.
Yes.
They had a strong social dimension as well.
Yes. Guilds weren't just about profit and competition. They also provided a system of mutual support for their members.
Okay.
They offered financial aid to those in need, cared for orphans and widows, and even collectively bargained for fair wages and working conditions.
It sounds like a blend of a labor union and a social safety net all rolled into one.
Exactly.
And they also regulated production to ensure quality and prevent exploitation.
Yeah.
They even organized communal feasts and celebrations to strengthen social bonds and reinforce a sense of shared identity.
Precisely.
So they weren't just about protecting their economic interests,
Right.
but also about fostering a sense of community and solidarity among their members.
Precisely. Kropotkin argued that guilds, despite their limitations, offered a model of how cooperative economic organization and social support could function, even within a complex urban environment.
Okay.
Yeah. It's important to acknowledge that guilds weren't perfect.
Right.
They could be quite rigid, and membership wasn't always open to everyone.
Yeah.
Kropotkin recognized those flaws, but saw them as an illustration of how deeply ingrained mutual aid was, even in a complex economic system.
So while guilds weren't a utopia, they offered a glimpse into how cooperation could work on a larger scale.
Right.
But Kropotkin also saw a decline in these kinds of communal practices, right?
Yes.
What did he attribute that to?
He believed that the rise of centralized states, coupled with the shift towards a market-based economy, led to a gradual erosion of those mutual aid institutions.
Right.
As societies grew more complex and individualistic, those older traditions of communal support and solidarity started to fade.
It almost sounds like he's describing the birth of modern capitalism.
It does.
With its emphasis on individual competition and the pursuit of profit above all else.
That was a major part of his critique. He saw the privatization of land, the suppression of workers' unions, and the rise of individualistic ideologies as forces that undermine the long-held traditions of mutual support. It's like the social fabric was being rewoven with threads of self-interest.
And in Kropotkin's view, that shift had significant consequences.
It did.
It wasn't just about losing a sense of community. It was about undermining the very foundations of human progress.
Exactly. He argued that by prioritizing individual gain over collective well-being, we risk losing those essential qualities of cooperation, empathy, and solidarity that have allowed us to thrive as a species. It's almost a cautionary tale, warning us about what we lose when we stray too far from our cooperative roots.
But even with this decline, Kropotkin wasn't a pessimist, was he?
No, not at all.
He still saw hope for mutual aid in the modern world.
Absolutely. Kropotkin firmly believed in the enduring power of the human spirit to cooperate. Even in the face of a society increasingly focused on individual success. He pointed to examples like labor unions, worker cooperatives, and community support networks as signs that this instinct for mutual aid was alive and well.
So, while he was critical of the direction modern society was taking, he wasn't resigned to it.
No.
He saw these examples as glimmers of hope, as proof that the cooperative spirit could still flourish even in the midst of a competitive world.
Yes, and I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from his work. Despite the challenges that impulse towards mutual aid, that desire to connect and support one another persists. It might take different forms. It might be expressed in new ways, but it's still there, woven into the fabric of our being.
And that brings us to the present day. What's fascinating is that despite the dominance of individualistic ideologies, particularly in the Western world, there's a resurgence of interest in these very mutual aid principles and practices that Kropotkin was writing about over a century ago.
It's almost like we're coming full circle as we face increasing social and economic inequality, climate change, and political polarization. There's a growing awareness that the traditional systems, the state and the market, aren't adequately meeting people's needs.
And that's driving a renewed interest in community-based solutions, grassroots organizing, and alternative economic models that prioritize cooperation and shared ownership. It's like people are rediscovering the power of working together, of relying on each other, rather than waiting for someone else to fix things.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's not just nostalgia for a simpler past. It's a recognition that in a world facing increasingly complex challenges, we need each other more than ever.
Okay, so let's get specific.
Sure.
Where do we see this happening today? What are some concrete examples of this resurgence of mutual aid in action?
We see it in the rise of community gardens, food banks, and time banks, where people are sharing resources, skills, and time without relying on monetary transactions. It's about building connections and supporting each other outside the traditional structures of the marketplace.
Those are fantastic examples.
They are.
It's like people are creating their own economies of care. Bypassing the traditional systems and building networks of support based on shared values and needs.
Precisely. And we also see it in the growing popularity of worker cooperatives, where employees collectively own and manage their workplaces, ensuring a more equitable distribution of profits and decision-making power.
It's fascinating how this model challenges the traditional top-down hierarchy of most businesses.
It does.
Instead of a small group at the top reaping the rewards while workers struggle.
Worker cooperatives offer a vision of a more democratic and equitable workplace.
And it's gaining traction. More and more people are realizing that by working together, they can create more sustainable and fulfilling livelihoods, both for themselves and their communities.
It's a mini revolution happening within the economic system itself.
It is.
But what about outside of the economic sphere?
Where else are we seeing this resurgence of mutual aid playing out?
Think about the countless mutual aid networks that sprang up in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
That was truly remarkable.
It was.
It was like overnight, people were organizing to deliver groceries to the elderly, check in on their neighbors, and provide support to those who were struggling. There was this incredible outpouring of compassion and solidarity, all driven from the ground up.
Those networks weren't waiting for government intervention or relying on traditional charities. They were self-organized. Grassroots efforts fueled by a sense of solidarity and a desire to care for their communities. It was a powerful demonstration of what's possible when people come together to support one another.
It really highlighted the resilience of communities when they tap into that collective spirit.
And many of those networks have continued beyond the immediate crisis. Evolving into more permanent structures that address a wider range of needs.
So it wasn't just about responding to an emergency, but about building a more resilient and supportive society overall. It's like that experience awakened something in people, a recognition that we're all in this together, and that we have the power to create change in our own communities.
I think that's where Kropotkin's ideas become particularly relevant. He wasn't just describing mutual aid as a historical phenomenon. He saw it as a powerful tool for social transformation.
Okay, so how can we apply his insights to the challenges we face today? How can we harness that power of mutual aid to create a more just and equitable world?
Kropotkin believed that by understanding and nurturing this inherent human capacity for cooperation, we can move beyond the limitations of both the state and the market and find new ways to organize our lives based on principles of solidarity and mutual support. He didn't offer a blueprint, but he believed the specific forms of mutual aid would need to evolve organically based on the needs and circumstances of each community.
So it's less about following a rigid ideology and more about cultivating a mindset, a way of being in the world that prioritizes cooperation and shared responsibility.
Exactly. It's about recognizing and nurturing our interconnectedness, building trust, and finding ways to support each other outside of traditional hierarchies and power structures.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about empowering communities to find their own solutions,
right,
to create systems of support that are tailored to their specific needs and context.
yes,
But I can already hear the cynics out there saying, this is all very idealistic.
yeah,
But in the real world, people are selfish.
right.
Competition is just human nature.
It's true that we live in a society that often celebrates individual ambition and success above all else.
Right.
But Kropotkin would argue that this is a learned behavior,
All right.
not an immutable law of nature. He believed that our capacity for cooperation is just as strong as our drive for competition, if not stronger.
So how do we challenge those deeply ingrained beliefs? How do we shift the narrative from me to we?
Kropotkin believed education was key.
Okay.
He argued that we need to teach people about the history and the benefits of cooperation,
Right.
showing them concrete examples of how mutual aid can create a more just and fulfilling world. It's about exposing the myth of the self-made man and highlighting the reality that human progress has always been a collective endeavor.
It's about changing the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what's possible.
Right.
But it's also about more than just words, right? It's about creating opportunities for people to experience the power of cooperation firsthand.
Exactly. Get people involved in community projects, worker cooperatives, or those mutual aid networks we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Give them a chance to see how working together can lead to tangible benefits for themselves and their communities.
It's about showing, not just telling.
Right.
You know, it's interesting how we started this deep dive talking about Kropotkin challenging the traditional interpretation of Darwinism. But in a way, he was also deeply aligned with Darwin's thinking.
How so?
Well, Darwin recognized that cooperation played a role in evolution, even if his followers often emphasized competition. And Kropotkin took that idea and ran with it, showing how mutual aid is just as essential for survival and progress as competition.
Right.
If not more so.
That's a brilliant observation.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. Kropotkin wasn't trying to negate Darwin's theory of natural selection. He was trying to expand our understanding of it, to show how cooperation is an equally powerful force in shaping the course of life on Earth.
And that's a message that feels more relevant than ever today.
It is.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
In a world facing unprecedented challenges, we need to remember that we're not in this alone.
We don't have to be.
We have an inherent capacity for cooperation.
I do.
For mutual aid.
Right.
And by tapping into that power,
Yeah.
we can build a more just, equitable,
Right.
and sustainable future for everyone.
It is.
It's like Kropotkin is offering us a different lens through which to view the world.
Yeah.
One that emphasizes our shared humanity and our capacity for collective action.
Absolutely. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the scale of the problems we face,
Right.
we can start to see opportunities for change,
Yeah.
for building a better future together.
You know, it makes me think about all the amazing things that people are already doing all over the world, like those grassroots movements, fighting for social justice,
Right.
environmental protection, economic equality.
Yes. Those movements are often fueled by a deep sense of solidarity and a belief in the power of collective action.
Yeah.
They embody the spirit of mutual aid in a very real and tangible way.
And it's not just about grand, sweeping movements. It's also about the everyday acts of kindness and support that we see happening all around us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kropotkin believed that mutual aid wasn't just some abstract ideal.
Right.
It was woven into the fabric of our daily lives. Think about the neighbor who helps you shovel snow,
Yeah.
the friend who lends a listening ear,
Right.
the community members who come together to support a family in need.
Those small acts of kindness can make a huge difference.
They can.
Not just for the individuals involved,
Right.
but for the community as a whole.
Yeah.
They create a sense of connection and belonging, of knowing that you're not alone in facing life's challenges.
Precisely.
Right, yeah.
And they build social capital,
Yeah.
strengthening the bonds of trust and reciprocity that are essential for a healthy and resilient society.
Okay, so we've talked about all the positive aspects of mutual aid.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, are there any potential downsides or challenges that we need to be aware of?
That's a great question. Like any social phenomenon, mutual aid isn't a panacea.
Right.
It's important to be mindful of potential pitfalls.
Okay.
For example,
Yeah.
mutual aid networks can sometimes struggle with issues of sustainability, decision-making,
Right.
and ensuring that everyone's needs are met equitably.
It's like anything else.
It is.
Good intentions aren't enough.
Wow.
You need structure, organization, and a clear understanding of shared goals and values.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And it's also important to be aware of the potential for power dynamics and exclusion to emerge within mutual aid groups,
Right.
just as they can in any social setting.
That makes sense.
It does.
It's like you need to be constantly vigilant,
Yeah.
ensuring that everyone has a voice,
Right.
and that power is distributed fairly.
Precisely. And it's also crucial to be mindful of the larger social and political context in which mutual aid operates.
Okay.
While it can be a powerful force for positive change, it's not a substitute for systemic solutions to issues like poverty,
Right.
inequality, and oppression.
So it's not about creating parallel societies,
Right.
but about working to transform the existing systems
Yeah.
to make them more just and equitable.
Exactly. Mutual aid can play a vital role in that transformation,
Yeah.
but it's not a solution in and of itself.
I appreciate that nuance.
Yeah.
It's like mutual aid is a tool, a powerful one,
Yes.
but it needs to be used strategically
It does.
and in conjunction with other efforts to create lasting social change.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Mutual aid is not a silver bullet,
Right.
but it can be a powerful catalyst for building a more just, equitable,
Yeah.
and fulfilling world.
And that's a message that feels incredibly hopeful,
It is.
especially in these times.
It is. Kropotkin's work reminds us that even in the face of immense challenges,
Right.
we have the capacity to come together, to
Yeah.
support each other,
Yeah.
and to build a better future.
It's a radical,
Yeah.
revolutionary idea,
Yeah.
but it's also deeply human and deeply inspiring.
And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring the ideas of Peter Kropotkin
It has,
and the enduring power of mutual aid.
It has indeed. And I hope it's inspired you to think differently about the world around you,
Yeah.
to see the potential for cooperation and solidarity, even in the most unexpected places.
And maybe even to find ways to put these ideas into action in your own life and community.
I hope so.
After all, as Kropotkin reminds us, the future is ours to create.
And that's a responsibility we should all take seriously.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of mutual aid.
Thank you.
Keep those radical thoughts flowing,
Keep in.
and we'll catch you next time.
Until then, keep exploring and keep connecting.